I'd like to welcome our panel, and I do appreciate them stepping forward. I will announce that I'm proud that they have all earned their Masters of Science and Human Resources from Loyola University, Chicago. And what they've learned is that when they graduate from Loyola, it's a lifelong commitment because we come back and ask them to do stuff. Welcome panel members, welcome participants. And what I'd like to do is have each of the panel members speak just briefly about the challenges their companies have faced, HR challenges in terms of the COVID pandemic, and then talk about what they've done to enhance the capabilities of human resources during this time. So I'd like 3 to 4 minutes, and then we will open things up to questions. Julie, would you like to start?
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Julie Dreixler. I work with Graham Media Group. And Graham Media Group, just to give you a little bit of the background of the company, we're a boutique TV station group owner. So we own 7 TV stations in 6 markets, not in Chicago. Our headquarters is in Chicago, but there's only about 5 of us here. Our stations are in big cities like Houston, Detroit, Orlando, San Antonio, Jacksonville, Florida, and Roanoke, Virginia. So we're spread out. Our stations also serve as media hubs because they have award-winning websites and mobile apps. So we deliver news basically on air, online, and on the go. So that's a little bit about our company. About 1,000 employees, and we consider ourselves first informers, if you will. So do you want me to continue then, Dow?
Oh, well, no, that's fine. Why don't we go along and then we'll come back and just really jump into the questions.
Sounds great.
Sure, thank you. And glad everybody could join us today. Appreciate your time. I work for Glanbia Performance Nutrition, which is a manufacturer of sports nutrition and lifestyle supplements. So we are headquartered actually out of Ireland, out of Kilkenny, Ireland. But over here in North America, we have a majority of our employees. Globally, we have about 2,500. And I would say about 1,600 to 1,700 reside here in North America. We have manufacturing facilities here that actually manufacture products such as Optimum Nutrition protein powders. So if you were to go into a GNC, a vitamin shop, or online at Amazon, you can certainly purchase many of our products. Others include, many of you may know, Slim Fast, as well as Amazing Grass and Think bars as well. And for us, our manufacturing facilities are located here in Aurora, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. And we have a manufacturing plant in Florida and then in the UK as well. So for us, over the past few years, we've been keeping our plants going. We are an essential business because we are considered food. So we'll have, I'm sure, more discussion around that as well.
Thank you very much. Alex.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's such a nice day out, and we haven't had very many of those recently. Alex Moreno, Vice President, Human Resources at the Chicago Transit Authority. So I assume if you haven't taken a bus or a train, you probably have seen them around the city, especially to and from either the Loyola campuses. I've been with the CTA for a little over 5 years. We have about 11,000 or so employees, all stationed in the general Chicagoland area at either a garage or a rail stop or a facility, a maintenance facility, or our control center here in the Chicagoland area. Thanks again, and I'm happy to be part of this discussion today.
Well, thank you all. Again, please start queuing up your questions in the chat, but I'm going to take the opportunity as moderator to ask the first question or two just to get things going. Maybe one of the big questions is, how has the pandemic reshaped your role as an HR professional? How has the HR pandemic reshaped your role? Anybody like to start?
Sure, I guess.
Okay.
I'll tell you, the first and foremost, I think during this whole period is you've had to really lead with empathy. And that's not to say that HR people don't do that already, but that has been kind of the name of the game, leading with empathy and being very flexible. I think safety and health of employees has definitely risen to the top as a very, very important. All of a sudden, I think I've become the company doctor, in our group of people asking questions and should I come to work? Should I not come to work? That kind of thing. Just personally, it's strengthened my video conferencing and remote collaboration skills. So that's just some of the highlights of how that's reshaped my world here.
Thank you. Sue, we've lost you. You're on mute.
Here we go. Am I back on?
Yep.
Okay. Woo. Certainly to add to what Julie was saying as well, I think as HR professionals, we have really risen to the top this past year. The focus on HR has been tremendous because of all of the change. I know for our plants, keeping the essential workers on the ground and working, protocols that we never would have known or dreamt about have had to be put in place and very quickly, and becoming the key communicator, I think, as Julie alluded to as well. So having those answers, becoming informed on COVID and other topics, and safety is the number one issue for all of our employees and their well-being. So we've had to emphasize both the safety and the well-being of our employees, and really, again, I know from my organization, HR was at the top in terms of priorities in 2020.
Thank you.
I've had a similar experience at the CTA with the HR role changing, similar in the fact that we really do need to, we've always led with empathy, but now more than ever, really from a cultural perspective, we can probably all ask ourselves, in pre-pandemic, when we felt a little sick, it was okay to go to work. You would just kind of like get through it. Now you really have to pause and say, it's not safe for me to go to work. So just going through that cultural shift took some a lot of thought and time for us to get through. We're the employees that go out there in the snow and clear the snow out to get the buses and the trains out. So getting that message through to our employees was key, and having them really realize that our strength was really something that we needed to be cautious of and more aware of. And hey, if you don't feel sick, if you feel sick, don't come to work. So from a culture perspective, it was, that's the only thing I have to add based on what Julie and Susan said. Empathy, certainly, flexibility, certainly, but for us, it was really the culture. Just raising our awareness around that aspect. So.
Thank you. Yeah. Maybe getting right to HR and employment practices. What is there an example of what major HR practices changed for you under the pandemic?
Well, what really changed for us, again, we're TV stations. So we are considered an essential business. We never closed our doors, but we quickly got people working remotely. So I think what really has changed has been this hybrid workplace now that we have, where some people do have to be in the station, some people don't have to be in the station. And so, we're still working through all of that. We're not back full time. We do have 2 stations, as I said, in Texas, and yesterday they opened up, no masks. And so, we have employees calling us and saying, so what's the company's stance on this? And we're saying, continue as you've been doing. Our goal is still to get the majority of folks vaccinated as quickly as possible. But so that's, one of probably the biggest thing is, we're managing now a hybrid workforce. And I don't think we will ever go back to everybody fully having to come into the station. And similar to what Alex said, we changed too. Before, people were sick and you come on in because that's what you did. And now we're saying, stay at home, and we're setting up people at home so they can still contribute, even if they have, a runny nose or whatever. So that's been some of that. And then employment practice. I know that's what you're talking about, but really in communication, I think we've all been talking about, just communication has increased in everything that you do. There's a lot of check-in calls, there's a lot of video calls, all of that. So that's an employment practice that we're trying to get out there. You got to check in on folks. Again, I think it adds to that safety and well-being of employees that, we were talking about, that we're responsible for.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would add to that as well. We have a population out of the office, the office workers that are working remotely, and then obviously our plants are still running on the ground. And I think the ways of working, and I often say pre-COVID, we would not have seen this hybrid approach. Our folks were in the office, that was the expectation. And as I often say, never let a crisis go to waste. We were able to put in, what we are referring to as smart working principles as well. So we know going back, when and if we go back, that we'll never go back to full-time in the office, that there will be this hybrid approach of some folks at home, some days, and other days in the office. But part of that was putting together, I think, different practices around what we call smart working principles. And the pledge, being respectful of people's time. I think as all of us are sitting even on this call, right? And again, thank you for taking your lunchtime often to do that. But we need to be respectful of people's time. We're on these Zoom team calls all the time, taking breaks. There's organizational fatigue, right? From being all day on these calls, where before we might've been in person or have a break in between. So really maintaining and being able to embrace some different ways of working is going to be very important.
For us, certainly for me, pre-pandemic, I thought I was on all the time, having the role that I have. Now I really feel as though I'm on all the time. And what Susan said certainly resonates. And that's something that I think from an HR perspective, we can take the lead on. What is the balance? What is the right balance? Smart working principles, I wrote that down. I like giving initiatives names, and that, I'll probably borrow that if that's okay. But we certainly, do you really need to make a call at 8:30 at night when it could wait until the next day? Or does the email need to go out at 10 o'clock at night when it could wait until the next day? Certainly the 24/7 aspect of what we do requires us to be flexible, but we need to be smart about it as well. Otherwise, if that bleeds into the culture as we form the new norm, we may find out that our burnout rate is will increase, and it's just not a healthy work environment. We got to figure out what the right balance is. That's probably been the biggest change. All of our processes are a little bit more digital. Some are fully digital now. And for instance, our recruitment is fully digital. It's on Zoom. It probably will never go back to the process that we had before. It's just much more efficient to conduct interviews on Zoom and many other functions virtually. And we want to maintain those efficiencies that we've gained by not letting this opportunity go to waste, as you said, Susan. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know the university has certainly been reshaped in terms of new teaching methods. I know our university went from most classes being taught on, in person. Within 2 weeks, everything was online. And it certainly increased, I think, the flexibility and the ability of our faculty and staff in terms of the way we work. So in some ways, it's helped us develop some new skills. Well, let's talk a bit about this remote workplace. I know certainly going into the pandemic, before it happened, there was really mixed feelings, lots of mixed feelings about it. There were organizations that started into remote work and then quickly retreated. And I know that Julie just mentioned a little bit about what that was going to be like. But what does the remote work look like going forward? I don't know, Alex, do you want to start out this time?
All right. In my mind, there are probably 3 or 4 groups of employers out there. There are that set of employers that want to rush back to pre-pandemic. I don't believe we'll be in that bucket. Then on the other side of the spectrum, there are employers who want to maximize everything virtual and take advantage of this instance. We're probably somewhere in the middle, a hybrid. Even if there was a light switch turned on and we were all given the green light to go back tomorrow, for instance, I wouldn't be able to go back tomorrow at full capacity. I don't have enough chairs. Right now, we're trying to rebuild our workforce. We had to go through several months of not hiring essential workers because we weren't sure how safe it was to really even meet with folks. At some point, you need to meet with individuals to take an employee ID picture or whatnot. So there was a pause to that, and now we're recovering now, but there's a hazard associated with our positions that wasn't there pre-pandemic. This COVID hazard that still exists, and we're seeing some challenges with recruitment. So even if tomorrow we were given the green light to go back, I would still need to function, at least from my perspective. I would still need to have part of my team work virtually. So, I think the future is probably going to be the same for a lot of organizations, a mix of all, the three spectrums I mentioned. Some organizations by default will just have to go back because, that restaurant workers, for example, once that opens up again, you have to be on site. Medical facilities have to be on site. But I think where you can telework, organizations, at least the efficient ones, will opt to really consider that moving forward. I think it's going to be with us, certainly at a higher percentage than it was before.
Yeah, I would agree, Alex, totally. We'll never go back to where we were at. This puts, just an increase in having to have the understanding or better technology out there. I mean, my company has gone through various platforms. I mean, we've changed and gone to GoToMeeting and then Zoom and then Teams. And we've been back and forth on just really trying to find what is the best fit for us. So that's why I say that personally, I've strengthened my video conferencing because, having to be on all these different platforms. But I think that's really, what we're doing. We've got a great, technology team that obviously is out there, trying to make it work for everybody. And the folks that do go back to the stations, we're going to almost have like a hoteling type situation where it may not be a desk, a permanent desk for them. They may bring their stuff in a backpack and, set up for the day and move from there. So that's some of the stuff that we're looking at.
Yeah, and I would echo that. I think the other piece, again, will be at some sort of hybrid approach is our anticipation as we return back to the offices. But I think it will also change our footprint going forward too. Do we need all of the office space that we currently have and in the various sites? So I would anticipate that going forward, as Julie mentioned, because we won't have everybody in at the same time, obviously you may not have a permanent desk or what have you assigned to you. So being a little bit more agile and flexible around that, and hence we will not need all of this space that we've had in the past as well. So that's potentially another change coming.
Mhm.
What, that sort of leads into a question that I have, is that all of a sudden we can recruit people, for remote work anywhere in the world, literally. We can bring in all kinds of people and all kinds of talent. But my questions is, how are we going to retain that talent when all the person has to do is change their, email address to change companies? It's, one time, you sort of had to move your family maybe, and made some kinds of commitments, and organizations were a little bit sticky. You actually knew people in person, and you were at the office, and the world changed, right? Have folks been thinking about that one?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's key in terms of retention. I think there's two sides to the coin. I can say one, I have recruited this past year two C-suite individuals, one of whom I have actually never met in person. Right. So completed that virtually, which is almost unheard of. 12 months ago, I would have told you that never would have happened. We would have definitely flown that person in. We would have gone through, these panel interviews and what have you. So definitely changed that way. So we've been able, though, to attract talent that we probably wouldn't have had otherwise. So that, as you mentioned, Dow, that the talent pool is much broader now than we would have had before. On the other flip side of the coin, as you mentioned, how do we retain then those people? And I think that's where engagement is going to be key moving forward. How do we engage and keep those people within the organization, whether it's the career pathing, we call them career lattices, and how do we offer those opportunities? But we have to think differently, because they're not sitting in front of us, right? You're not in a training program, or you're not what have you. So how do we offer those opportunities differently? And I'll tell you, we don't have that all figured out yet. We need to do that as we go forward, because that will be a different model than what we've had in the past.
Yeah, I would agree, Sue. We're in the same boat. We've really been looking at our employee development, and we have been known for a lot of internal development and branding our own kinds of programs and whatnot. And here I'm going to be delivering some type of leadership program third quarter, and I don't even have that figured out exactly how I'm going to do it. It's clearly not going to be all day. It's going to be in snippets, because again, you have to balance that against the burnout and the fatigue that people get. So, but I do still think that that's important to retain people, is if people feel like they're developed, if people feel that they are still able to make an impact. A little bit of what Alex was saying about culture, if we can still maintain this culture, then we're going to be ahead of the game here. But retention is on everybody's mind here.
Excellent question. I think this is one of those HR segments that is going to be determined probably over the next 18 months. What do we do, or how do organizations move forward and really market themselves to not only your external candidates, but your current employees? We certainly, when the pandemic hit, we moved forward with cleaner facilities, buses, trains. We certainly marketed our PPE delivery to our employees. One of the things that we did was highlight our EAP program, and we issued, and we're going to continue to do this, and hopefully it helps. We've retained, retention hasn't been that big of an issue for us as of yet. But one of the things we did was we put together an EAP pouch. We called it a wellness pouch. And in the wellness pouch, we had a digital thermometer. And back then, those things were really hard to find. We put in there vitamins, like a vitamin pack for employees, herbal seeds, so employees can plant a garden. And we also put in there a metallic key that they can use to open doors. And that really resonated with our employee base, and we received a lot of positive feedback from them for that, along with sponsoring wellness races. We saw that number tick up significantly. They were virtual, obviously. So as we move forward, we're looking at continuing to capitalize on our EAP program, our wellness program, and just showing people that we care about them, their well-being, as we deliver our service to the city. So until we figure out some other way to do it, that's probably the best we'll be able to do, and it's worked okay for us so far.
Okay, let me just remind folks, you can submit your questions on chat, please, and I will relay those on to our panel. That said, maybe going back to the HR role, I know a good chunk of HR is walking up and down the hallways and getting out and meeting the people. And, there's always the case where, somebody sees the HR person and an issue that's sort of maybe been bugging them, but they haven't been motivated enough to send an email. That, it's just simply seeing you that sort of triggers and increases those communications. What do you do with that in a remote Zoom kind of world?
Well, I think Sue and I were talking a little bit earlier just about this, that, our days get consumed with, maybe a call or an email, and then regarding any follow-up, it's like, okay, next week, and we're scheduling it. We are actually in there sending invites to people just to make sure that we are, continuing conversations that need to be had. So that definitely has changed. And it's, we do a lot of written communication, although, we're finding that the right balance with that, because, in today's world, people aren't reading emails either, they're reading, snippets. And so, we're trying to find the right balance of connecting with people. But for all of our HR folks, and we don't have many. We have like an HR rep that is in each of our stations that are trying to kind of manage it all. I mean, I'm asking them all, and be in touch with your folks, even through this whole COVID situation, when people are out, whether they're quarantining or they're working from home. We're saying it's not good enough just for you to check in on occasion. We're connecting with people daily to find, because things change in their life. They could be feeling fine one day, and next day we find out they're in the hospital. And we continue to utilize the EAP too, and all of that. But it's tough. It's a lot of what Alex said, that I thought I was busy before, and when you're in the media, it is a 24/7 business, and I'm feeling it. It's a 24/7 business.
I would have to agree with you, Julie. And I think, I loved how Alex described kind of the well-being, and taking care of employees. And I think that's key. I think the other thing we've really come to rely on is our line managers as well, because I can't walk the floor like we used to be able to do. So really leaning on those managers and listening to them and checking in with them. What are you hearing? And then, doing the follow-up with those individuals. But it is a huge effort, and And as I was saying earlier, I would often be out of my office, say 2 hours, and maybe I only went to see one person, but by the time I got back, 3 other people have stopped me along the way and asking these questions. So I think it's challenging for us as HR, professionals to make sure we are taking care of those employees and meeting their needs. It's definitely for us become more of a challenge.
Well, we do have a question here from Gabriel. Do you have employees asking to work remotely from another US state or even country for a period? Are you allowing this, and how do you decide your approach? And there certainly is some pay issues and some employment law issues, aren't there, in having people in different locations? Does anybody want to try that question first?
Well, I just actually had something happen like that I just found out. We have a what we call a traffic unit, and it's not traffic, Alex, your kind of traffic. It's traffic of putting advertisements on the air. And so they're managing, the commercials and all of that on the TV, and they work 100% remote. They used to work in one of the stations. It was a hub. And then we said, okay, you can work remote and they can get their job done. Well, I just found out today that an employee moved to Maryland. And so it was like, whoa. And I don't think the employee didn't know the ramifications of different state, different taxes. We have to set up now different tax codes because we had nobody in Maryland, and so didn't realize that. We are fine with that, but we now have to go out and educate our employees, the ones that are 100% remote, that if you do this, there could be some tax consequences. Like, Illinois has state tax, Michigan has lower state tax, but Detroit has a city tax, and we had somebody move there, and then all of a sudden their taxes were affected, and it's like, we are not altering people's pay because they choose to go somewhere else. Now again, that so that's, I guess that's really what we're still working through this. There are definitely people that have to be in the market because that they report in the market and they tell stories in the market. But the folks like our traffic hub that are 100% remote, it is okay for them to move. But again, we're now trying to get our arms around it and be able to create some smart working principles, because I'm also going to take that and make sure that they keep in touch with us. And this happened out of one of our employees just going to help their parents, right, through this whole COVID situation, and didn't realize, and then they were working, remotely. And so, that's kind of what we're dealing with right now too.
Yeah, and I would echo from an international perspective, we have employees around the world, and a few that ended up going back home at the beginning of the COVID lockdown because they had family members or what have you, and have ended up in their home country then. So there are huge tax implications around that, particularly from a US where we tax you no matter where you are in the world, to individuals, in their home country. So very complex when you're dealing with an international situation as well. So for the most part, of course, we want our folks to be at home with their families and also allow that, but there are some tax implications that the organization is having to work through. So key principles around that. And I think Julie hit the other one. There are some roles that cannot work remotely. Our plant workers, similar to Alex and your folks, in the trains, on the buses and working with them they don't have an option of working remotely. So we do have to look at the roles, and, it will be role dependent in terms of who can and cannot work remotely.
Here's another good question. Do you anticipate a change in general sick leave or paid time off policies following the pandemic?
Yeah, with my organization, we have vacation days, and then we have what is called salary continuation. And that is, the way we view that is, it's based on your tenure in the organization. And it is, it can be up to 13 weeks based on, again, your tenure. And that is insurance that should you become ill, that you will, have pay at full amount. So we don't, quote unquote, offer sick days. It's typically you got vacation or you have the salary continuation. Now, that's not to say that we're not, or we haven't been flexible when people have had in the past to go to doctors or whatever. But it is a different program that we offer. Now, during this whole period of time, very happy to say that we did not have to lay off anybody. People that were sick or quarantined, we had them work from home. We paid everybody during this period of time. So I think, again, it's all about flexibility going forward. We will not be changing our salary continuation plan, but again, we will at some point, because we're still paying for people that might be out or quarantining, but at some point, and maybe in the fall, we'll revert back to counting those days against the salary continuation. So people will still get paid, but we're going to account for it a little bit differently. So it's a little bit different.
Other changes, or should they? Here's a question, a career question. Is it possible or hopeful for an HR professional to work in a remote role, in a sort of a permanent kind of base? Or will they really need to get back, into the facilities and be present?
I think that really depends on the individual. It really depends on the individual. What stage in your career are you? If you're early on in your career, I would imagine that both roles would be of value to you, but you just want to keep an eye as to where you want to land and be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. There is something lost to not being together with your coworkers. There is I mentioned earlier, the cultural piece that gets lost. The learning on the job aspect gets lost. Learning from others is not as easily accomplished, even though we're on, calls or Zoom calls most of the day. There's still something that's missing. So if you're earlier on in your career, I would almost opt to being on site so you don't lose that, especially hopefully since, vaccinations are continuing to roll out. And also if you're managing a large group of folks, it certainly is easier to do that on site than it is on a Zoom call or regular calls. So it really depends on the company, the individual, what you're looking for as a career. And once you put those equation items together, you can make the best decision for yourself.
Well, one big question that's out there, and it has come up on our list. What is going to be your company's philosophy or policy concerning vaccinations if a person works on location, in person?
Yeah, I think, and we're all grappling with that right now, right? With the rollout of the vaccinations. And so from our company perspective, we highly encourage vaccinations. We are not mandating vaccinations. We believe, again, that it is beneficial for employees, but will not, make it a mandate within the organization. We believe we will continue with our current safety protocol practices. So you're still wearing masks, we're still social distancing, we're still providing the same safety protocols, whether an individual has a vaccination or not. But again, we're highly encouraging, and as we continue through the rollout of the vaccinations, trying to bring those vaccinations on site as well to the manufacturing places, so that again we can encourage that, but we will not put a mandate down.
We're doing the exact same thing. We're not mandating, but we are highly encouraging. In fact, I'm leading kind of a vaccination task force, and so we actually went out with an infogram, trying to address people's questions. We started with a survey just to get a feel for how many people were planning on getting. It was anonymous, but we're planning on getting the vaccines, and and what concerns for the people that weren't, what were their concerns, and that led us to our Q&As. We probably have close to 85% of the employees who completed the survey saying they plan on getting, the vaccination, which is great. So we are just continuing to educate. We've got, we're going to have town halls at each of our stations with local doctors. We will be doing promos because, hey, we're in the business of videos and everything. So we will be doing promos, showing our own employees out there, saying they got it, that kind of thing. And I think what we are probably looking for is, again, probably about that 85% within a station to have received the vaccination for us to feel like, okay, it's probably safe, but, we will, for the time being anyways, consider all the protocols, of the mask wearing and the social distancing and the cleaning of the facilities. Our TV stations are probably cleaner than my home right now because of, what we have increased the cleaning schedule. So
we will also encourage vaccination. And from an HR perspective, we're building a marketing initiative to help our recruitment. I think that'll be a potentially differentiator for employers, those employers that actively market the fact that they support vaccination, and those that probably don't. So hopefully that helps us retain and also attract new employees, essential workers.
Okay. Well, I think we have time for maybe just one more quick question, and then we're going to move into the smaller groups. And let's look here real quick and see what we have. Or maybe I should just ask the members, is there something in terms of an HR professional in these times as we move forward that you would certainly recommend as a practice, or certainly something in terms of a person entering the HR career going forward that you would recommend? A behavior, an attitude, what would that be? It's a hard
yeah, I think, for HR folks, I think we certainly have demonstrated agility. I think, that is key. It's flexibility, and being able to change and change directions when needed. None of us, expected any of this remote working and COVID lockdown last year. So being agile, addressing to that is going to be a key going forward for anybody in the HR area. And I think the other approach is the can do, right? I did see a question, a comment in the chat, around, gosh, are there surveys out there about how people feel, kind of pre and post COVID, right? And funny enough, we did run, we ran surveys throughout last year just to see where people were feeling and trying to get a pulse of the organization. And I'd say it stayed consistent with our prior engagement. People felt very confident that we were putting safety first. We were taking that all into account. Felt very comfortable. We were communicating. And I think we've all said, all three of us, communications have gone up, right? We have to do that. So I think that's been important. So communication is a key attribute, again, from an HR perspective. And we are in the front line. And that positivity can be very contagious, and being knowledgeable and having information is important as an HR professional.
Totally agree.
Uh,
Totally
okay.
agree.
Well, thank you very much. We thank the panel. And before we move into our the small group sessions, if people would like to join us, I just want to announce that we have 3 programs upcoming. First Wednesday of each month. The next one will be hosted by Peter Norlander in its Strategic HR, Valuing People. On May 5th, it will be Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion from a public moment to a company philosophy. And that will be hosted by Professor Arup Varma. And then on June 2nd, I'll be back as the host, encouraging innovation, the role of HR in developing innovation. So those are some of the programs, and we'd certainly encourage folks to send suggestions, both of topics and of people they would like to see join us on Insights. Now, for moving on to groups, and I'm hoping we can do this. We have several